The Last Lantern of Willow Creek, Part 1. The night the light stayed on. Asterisk. The first whispers of dawn had not yet brushed the sky, when Willow Creek lay in its usual quiet slumber. The small colonial village, tucked into a gentle bend of a slow-flowing river, had seen little change over the decades. Its wooden homes, aged and weathered by countless winters, leaned slightly, as if tired from holding the memories of generations. Smoke rose in thin spirals from chimneys, curling like delicate fingers toward the soft, gray clouds above. The streets were empty, save for the occasional clatter of a barn door swinging in the wind. A few lanterns still burned along the main path, their flickering light barely touching the cold ground. Among them, one lantern shone brighter than the rest, suspended from a post near the old general store. It was a lantern that no one ever lit in the morning and somehow never seemed to go out. A soft, golden glow that whispered of warmth, safety, and stories long forgotten. On this particular night, a gentle fog crept through the trees surrounding Willow Creek, blurring the edges of the forest and swallowing the riverbank in a pale haze. The air smelled of damp earth, pine needles, and the faint hint of smoke from the chimneys. Somewhere in the distance, an owl hooted, a deep and solitary sound that carried far across the sleeping village. Inside one of the small cottages, a young girl named Clara stirred beneath her patchwork quilt. Her auburn hair spilled across the pillow, catching the lantern light that seeped through the thin curtains. She had always been sensitive to the quiet rhythms of Willow Creek, the way the wind whispered through the trees, how the river murmured at night, and the way the lantern near the general store never seemed to die. Tonight, however, something felt different. The light was stronger, somehow more alive, and it seemed to beckon her, inviting her to step outside and see what it might reveal. Her mother had always told her stories about the lantern. "It is not just a light, Clara," she had said. "It is a keeper of memories, a friend to those who listen carefully. It sees everything that happens in Willow Creek, and it remembers." Clara had never fully understood, but tonight, as she rubbed her sleepy eyes and pressed her small hands against the window pane, she felt a stirring of curiosity, a pull toward the light that seemed to call her name softly on the wind. The floorboards creaked under her bare feet as she slipped from the warmth of her bed. The house was still, silent except for the soft rustle of the quilt and the occasional sigh of the old wooden walls. She wrapped a shawl around her shoulders, pulled on her worn boots, and stepped into the cool fog-laden night. Outside, the world was muted and softened by the mist. The lantern hung steady, glowing warmly despite the damp chill in the air. Clara approached slowly, drawn by the light, her heart beating softly in her chest. She could hear the distant ripple of the river, the faint call of an owl, and the whisper of the wind through the pines. And then, almost imperceptibly, a sound joined the quiet, soft, deliberate footsteps on the path behind her. Clara froze, her breath catching in her throat. She turned, but the fog swallowed everything beyond a few feet. "Hello," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. No reply came, only the gentle hum of the lantern, as if it pulsed in rhythm with her own heartbeat. The lantern's light seemed to flicker and sway, sending shadows dancing across the ground. And then she noticed a faint figure, barely visible, standing just beyond the mist, Asterisk, the figure did not move, nor did it step forward, yet Clara felt a presence that was both comforting and unsettling. She had no fear. Not yet. Only a strange sense of anticipation. It was as if the figure had been waiting for her, knowing she would come. The lantern glowed brighter, illuminating the path in a golden circle that seemed to stretch just far enough to guide her. Asterisk, slowly, she took a step forward. The fog clung to her ankles like a cool, wet silk, and the soft earth beneath her feet muffled each movement. The figure remained silent, and Clara realized she could not make out any features, only the vague shape of someone who might have walked the village streets 100 years ago. The sense of familiarity was odd, comforting, almost like remembering a dream she had long forgotten. Asterisk, who are you? She asked, her voice steadier now. The lantern flickered again, casting tiny sparks of light that danced across the figure's form. And then, as if in response, the figure raised a hand slowly, pointing toward the river that curved around the village. Clara hesitated, but felt no fear. Instead, a deep, unexplainable trust welled up within her. The lantern's glow seemed to envelop them both, creating a small private world in the midst of the foggy night. Asterisk, she followed the gesture and walked toward the riverbank. The mist thickened, wrapping the world in a soft, ghostly blanket. And there, at the edge of the water, she saw the reflection of the lantern in the calm, dark surface. But it was not just the light she saw, was movement, shapes swirling beneath the surface. As if the river itself remembered every story ever told in Willow Creek. The figure stood beside her now. Though she still could not see its face, only the gentle tilt of a head. A presence that was alive with patience and history. Asterisk, Clara knelt by the river, watching the ripples reflect the lantern's golden glow. She felt a deep connection to Willow Creek she had never known before, a sense that the village itself was alive, that the buildings, trees, and even the river carried memories older than she could imagine. And in that quiet moment, she understood her mother's words. The lantern did remember. It had waited for her. It had waited for someone to listen. Asterisk, minutes passed, or perhaps hours, Clara could not tell. The fog thickened, and the lantern's light pulsed softly, steady and warm. The figure whispered something, a sound that was more felt than heard, brushing her mind with images of people long gone, of laughter and sorrow, of nights just like this one. The river shimmered, the pines swayed, and Clara felt herself drifting, a gentle calm washing over her. She knew she would not forget this night. Not ever. Asterisk, and then, as silently as it had appeared, the figure stepped back into the mist, fading until it was gone entirely. The lantern still glowed, steady and reassuring. Clara rose to her feet, her heart light and full, and began the walk back home. The village remained asleep, unaware of the quiet miracle at the riverbank. The night that had been touched by something older, wiser, and infinitely kind. Asterisk, by the time she slipped back beneath her quilt, the first hints of morning light were brushing the horizon. The lantern's glow, ever faithful, lingered like a gentle promise. And Clara, warm and safe beneath her covers, drifted into a deep, peaceful sleep, knowing that Willow Creek and its secrets were alive, always watching, always waiting. Asterisk. The Last Lantern of Willow Creek Part 2. Secrets of the Riverbank, *, the morning after. Clara had followed the lantern to the riverbank. Willow Creek seemed no different. The fog had lifted, leaving the village bathed in a soft golden light that made the wooden houses gleam as if freshly polished. Smoke curled lazily from chimneys, and the occasional rooster crowed from somewhere along the main path. Children ran along the dirt roads, their laughter carrying over the river, while farmers tended to horses and wagons, preparing for the day's work. Yet for Clara, nothing seemed ordinary. The night's events clung to her mind like morning mist on the trees. She could still feel the presence of the figure by the river. Still see the golden glow of the lantern reflected in the dark water. And most of all, she felt a whispering pull, a subtle nudge that urged her to return, to discover what the river had been trying to show her. Clara dressed quickly, pulling her shawl around her shoulders and tying her boots tightly. Her mother, busy kneading dough for the day's bread, glanced up at her with a gentle frown. "You're going out again so early?" she asked, though her voice carried no anger. Clara only nodded, whispering, "I need to see the river, Mother." Her mother's eyes softened, and without another word, she returned to her work. The path to the riverbank was quiet, lined with pines whose needles shimmered in the morning dew. Birds called softly from the branches, and the wind carried the faint scent of fresh earth and fallen leaves. Clara's footsteps were almost silent on the soft soil, each one bringing her closer to the place where the lantern had guided her the night before. When she arrived, the golden light of the lantern was already waiting, steady and unwavering. But something had changed. The fog lingered now, low along the river's edge, curling around the reeds and small rocks like smoke from a hidden fire. The water itself seemed darker, as if holding more than its usual reflection. Clara knelt at the edge and peered in, and this time, she saw shapes moving beneath the surface. They were not fish, nor any other creature she could name. Long, shadowy forms shifted gently with the river's current, their movements almost deliberate. She blinked, unsure if her eyes were deceiving her, but the shapes remained. The figure from the previous night emerged from the mist once more, silent and patient. It gestured toward the water again, urging Clara to look more closely. Taking a deep breath, Clara leaned nearer. The shadows coalesced into faint faces, faint smiles, hands reaching out. They were people, or the memories of people, whose stories had been carried by the river for generations. She could see the blacksmith from decades past, hammering his iron, a young mother tending her child by a hearth, travelers resting beside a campfire. Each scene shimmered beneath the water, glowing softly with the lantern's golden reflection. The figure's presence reassured her. It was as if it were saying, "These stories are yours to see, yours to remember." Clara realized that the river did not simply reflect the present. It held the echoes of everyone who had ever walked the village streets, lived in its cottages, and loved or lost along its banks. Suddenly, a gentle ripple passed across the surface of the river. One of the images shifted, moving closer to Clara. It was a young boy, perhaps no older than 7, with a wide-brimmed hat and curious eyes. He waved to her, and though she knew he was only a shadow of the past, she felt an urgent sense of connection. "Who are you?" she whispered. The boy did not answer, but the figure beside her seemed to lean closer, nodding subtly. Then, the lantern's light flared briefly, illuminating a small wooden box tucked in the reeds. Clara reached for it, her fingers brushing the wet wood. Inside, she found a bundle of letters, tied neatly with a faded ribbon. Each letter was written in delicate, looping handwriting, the ink slightly smudged with age. Clara carefully untied the ribbon and began to read. The letters were correspondence between villagers long gone, some addressed to family, others to friends. They spoke of daily life, of harvests and celebrations, of fears and secrets. One letter, dated nearly 70 years ago, spoke of a hidden path along the river that led to a secret meeting place, a place where the villagers would gather in the night to protect their home from outsiders. Clara's heart quickened. The lantern's light seemed to pulse in agreement, as if affirming the importance of the letters. She understood now: the river, the lantern, the figure, they were guides, helping her uncover the history of Willow Creek and the stories that had been hidden beneath its waters. As she continued to read, the fog thickened, wrapping the riverbank in a soft, shimmery blanket. The figure stepped closer, pointing to the letters, then toward the distant edge of the village. Clara sensed an invitation, a challenge to follow the path described long ago. She tucked the letters carefully under her arm, determined to explore the route that had been kept secret for decades. The journey along the hidden path was quiet and eerie, lined with dense trees and undergrowth. Birds no longer called, and the river whispered alongside her, carrying the soft echoes of the past. Clara moved slowly, her eyes adjusting to the dim light filtered through the trees. Every step seemed to resonate with the memories of those who had walked the path before her. Halfway along the trail, she noticed an abandoned cabin, its roof sagging and windows dark. A faint glow emanated from inside, matching the warmth of the lantern she had followed. Clara approached cautiously, peering through the broken window. Inside, she could make out a small table, a single chair, and an old journal resting upon the surface. The journal's leather cover was cracked and worn, but the pages within seemed intact. Clara opened it gently. The handwriting was familiar, much like the letters she had found, but filled with personal observations and reflections. The writer spoke of the importance of the lantern, of keeping watch over the village, and of the river as a living memory. There was a sense of urgency, a warning of something to be mindful of, though the details were vague. The figure appeared beside her once again, silent and patient. Clara felt that this presence, though unseen by others, was deeply intertwined with the village, guiding her toward understanding and perhaps protection. She realized the lantern had not just been a beacon of light, it was a beacon of memory, history, and vigilance. Night was falling once more as Clara made her way back to the riverbank, letters and journal carefully secured. The lantern's glow had grown softer, welcoming her return. She knelt once again by the water, and the shadows beneath the surface shifted, forming the faces of the villagers whose stories she now carried. They seemed to smile at her, acknowledging that she had begun to understand their lives, their struggles, and their legacy. As she rose to leave, a gentle wind rustled through the trees, carrying a whisper that Clara could almost understand. Remember, protect, listen. The message was simple, yet heavy with meaning. Willow Creek was more than a village, it was a living memory, and the lantern was its heart. By the time she returned home, the sky was painted in shades of twilight, stars beginning to appear one by one. Clara placed the letters and journal carefully in a small chest beneath her bed. She knew she would return to the river, to the lantern, to uncover more stories and understand more about the mysterious figure who had chosen her to bear witness. That night, she slept with a sense of purpose and calm. The lantern's light, faintly visible through her window, glowed like a guardian spirit, and Willow Creek, ancient, secretive, and alive with the memories of generations, rested peacefully under the watchful glow. The Last Lantern of Willow Creek Part 3, The Secrets of Willow Creek. The following evening, Willow Creek settled into its familiar quiet, the sky painted in soft shades of indigo and violet. Clara had spent the day poring over the letters and the old journal she had discovered by the hidden path along the river. Each word she read carried her deeper into the lives of the villagers who had long since passed. Their joys, their fears, their hopes, they seemed to speak to her across the decades. Clara felt a sense of purpose she had never known. The lantern, the river, the mysterious figure, everything pointed toward a mission she was only beginning to understand. Willow Creek was not merely a village. It was a living repository of stories, and she had been chosen to witness and preserve them. As dusk settled, she wrapped herself in her shawl and made her way toward the river. The path through the trees was quiet, shrouded in the soft mist that always seemed to linger near the water's edge. The lantern glowed faintly in the distance, beckoning her as it had for nights before. Clara's heart raced with anticipation, yet she felt a deep sense of calm. She knew she was not alone. When she reached the riverbank, the figure appeared almost immediately, as if waiting for her. This time, Clara noticed subtle changes. The figure seemed more tangible, its presence warmer, almost protective. The lantern cast long shadows across the water, and Clara saw, for the first time, not just the faces of the past but their movements, the villagers going about their lives, celebrating, working, and sometimes mourning. The figure gestured toward the river, then pointed to a narrow wooden bridge that arched over the water. Clara realized she had never noticed it before. The bridge was old, its wood darkened by time and weather, and it seemed almost hidden within the fog and the trees. She stepped cautiously onto it, feeling the sway beneath her feet. The lantern's light followed, illuminating the path and guiding her across. On the other side, the forest opened into a small clearing. Here, the river curved gently, and the moonlight reflected off its surface like scattered silver coins. At the center of the clearing stood an ancient oak tree, its gnarled branches stretching toward the sky. Beneath the tree, a small stone altar rested, worn smooth by years of use. Clara approached it slowly, her curiosity mingling with reverence. The figure knelt beside the altar, motioning for Clara to do the same. She lowered herself onto the soft grass, her fingers brushing the cool stone. Then, as if the night itself had grown still in anticipation, the figure spoke, its voice barely audible, more like a thought brushing against her mind than words spoken aloud. The village remembers. Every heart, every hand, every life woven into Willow Creek. You are the keeper now. The lantern guides, but it is your eyes and ears that must see and hear. Clara nodded, understanding that her role was more than curiosity. She had become part of the village's living memory, entrusted with its stories and secrets. She spent hours at the clearing, observing the river's reflections and the shadows beneath the oak. The water shimmered with images, children playing in the dirt roads of long past summers, blacksmiths hammering in the village square, women carrying baskets of fresh bread, and men tending to the livestock. She could even glimpse moments of sadness, families mourning, travelers lost along the riverbank, and fires that had burned too bright and too fast. Each scene was fleeting yet vivid, and Clara felt as though she were walking alongside them, invisible yet intimately connected. As the night deepened, Clara noticed something new. One of the figures in the river's reflections seemed different, a woman clothed in dark fabric, her face hidden beneath a hood. She moved deliberately, gliding along the riverbank as though seeking something. Clara felt a chill run down her spine. This presence was unlike the others. It was not part of the peaceful memories. There was intent, a quiet vigilance, and perhaps even a warning. The figure beside her seemed to sense her unease. Do not fear her, it whispered in Clara's mind. She guards what must remain safe. Watch carefully, learn, but do not disturb. Clara watched as the hooded woman approached a small wooden chest tucked near the river's edge, then lifted it with surprising strength. Inside, Clara glimpsed scrolls and trinkets, artifacts of the village's past. Each item carried a story, a memory preserved through generations. The hooded figure placed them carefully, then vanished into the mist. Clara's heart pounded. The village was alive in ways she had not yet comprehended. It was a living, breathing entity, and the lantern was more than a guide, was a bridge between the present and the past. She realized that some stories were meant to be observed, some memories protected, and some secrets revealed only when the time was right. Hours passed, though it felt like minutes. The lantern's glow dimmed slightly, signaling the approaching dawn. Clara stood, feeling the weight of her new responsibility settle upon her shoulders. She had witnessed more than she could have imagined, yet she knew this was only the beginning. Willow Creek had many secrets, and she was now bound to uncover them, to learn from them, and perhaps to protect them. As she made her way back across the bridge, she paused and looked at the river one last time. The reflections shimmered, fading as the first light of dawn touched the village. The figure accompanied her to the edge of the woods, then bowed its head slightly before disappearing into the mist. Clara felt gratitude, respect, and a quiet determination. She was no longer a mere observer. She was part of Willow Creek's story. Returning home, she placed the letters, journal, and her observations carefully in her chest. Her mother, sensing a change in her, gave a small smile. You have seen much tonight, haven't you? Clara nodded, keeping the details to herself. Some experiences were too profound, too sacred, to be shared in words. That night, as she lay beneath her quilt, Clara dreamed not of ordinary things but of the village itself, the lantern, the river, the shadows, and the memories intertwined. She dreamed of the hooded woman and the stories she had guarded, and of the countless lives that had shaped Willow Creek. The village was alive in her dreams, breathing, whispering, and waiting. Asterisk and the lantern, faithful as ever, burned softly outside her window, a sentinel of light and memory. The Last Lantern of Willow Creek, Part 4. The Hidden Path. The days had grown shorter in Willow Creek, and the shadows of autumn stretched long across the village. Clara had settled into a quiet rhythm, spending her days studying the letters and journals she had found, and her nights following the lantern's gentle glow. Each evening, the river called her, the reflections dancing with the lives of villagers long gone. She had begun to recognize familiar faces, to understand the rhythms of the village, and to feel the weight of its hidden stories. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky turned a soft amber, Clara prepared to walk to the river. She wrapped her shawl tightly around her shoulders and tied her boots, her mind alert to the possibilities that awaited. The lantern already glimmered in the distance, a steadfast guide through the creeping fog. As she approached, the figure appeared, silent and steady. Its presence brought comfort. Yet Clara could sense something different in the air tonight, an energy that spoke of secrets deeper than she had yet discovered. The figure pointed once more toward the river, then motioned to a narrow, overgrown trail branching off from the main path. Clara realized this was a route she had never noticed before, hidden by years of neglect and the thick embrace of nature. She stepped onto the hidden path, feeling the soft moss underfoot and the gentle sway of low-hanging branches. The lantern's light seemed to follow, illuminating her way as though urging her onward. The path twisted and turned, curving through dense trees, until it opened onto a small clearing. Here, the river widened, forming a quiet pool where the reflections were sharper and more vivid than ever. Clara knelt at the water's edge, peering into the golden shimmer. The images beneath the surface seemed more active, more alive. Villagers moved with purpose, children ran and played, women tended gardens, and men carried bundles of wood. Yet among them, Clara noticed subtle changes, small disturbances in the reflections that hinted at something hidden, something the river had not yet revealed. The figure knelt beside her, pointing toward a small wooden structure partially hidden by reeds. It was a shed, weathered and worn, with its roof sagging under years of neglect. Clara approached cautiously. The lantern's glow cast long, soft shadows across the ground, and the mist seemed to curl protectively around the shed. She pushed the door open gently, the hinges creaking softly, revealing a space filled with artifacts of the village's past. Old tools, a wooden cradle, a bundle of worn cloth, and, in the corner, a stack of scrolls tied with a faded ribbon. Clara's fingers trembled slightly as she picked up the scrolls. They were maps, diagrams, and notes, all written in the careful, deliberate script of someone who had lived centuries ago. They depicted the village and its surrounding lands, marking locations of significance, hidden gardens, secret paths, and places where villagers had gathered in times of danger. One map, in particular, drew her attention. It showed a path leading from the riverbank to a secluded grove beyond the edge of the village. A path she had never seen, even in her previous explorations. Asterisk, the figure seemed to nod at her silently, as if confirming the importance of the discovery. Clara realized that this hidden path might hold answers to the mysteries she had been unraveling, perhaps even revealing the purpose of the lantern itself. She carefully tucked the scrolls under her arm and stepped back outside, the night air cool against her face. Asterisk, as she followed the map, the forest grew denser, the trees towering above her like silent sentinels. The lantern's light flickered gently, guiding her steps. She could hear the soft murmur of the river behind her, the distant hoot of an owl, and the rustle of leaves as the wind whispered through the branches. The sense of anticipation was nearly overwhelming, yet Clara felt a calm resolve. She was on the threshold of uncovering something significant. Asterisk. The path led her to a small stone archway, partially covered in ivy. Beyond it, the clearing opened into a grove, where the moonlight spilled across the ground, illuminating a circle of stones arranged in a deliberate pattern. Clara approached carefully, her eyes taking in the scene. Each stone bore faint carvings, symbols, letters, and shapes that seemed to pulse softly in the lantern's glow. She knelt to examine them, tracing the patterns with her fingers, feeling a connection to the generations who had created them. Asterisk, the figure appeared behind her, gesturing toward the carvings. Clara realized these stones were not merely decorative, they were markers, a guide to understanding the village's hidden history. She felt a gentle pressure in her mind, as if the figure were urging her to remember, to absorb, and to respect the knowledge before her. Asterisk, hours passed as Clara studied the stones, the scrolls, and the grove. The river whispered nearby, the reflections shimmering and shifting in ways that seemed almost alive. The lantern's light provided a comforting glow, a steady presence that made her feel safe, despite the depth of the mystery surrounding her. She began to understand that the village had been protected and preserved through these hidden paths. The careful placement of artifacts, and the guidance of the lantern, a guardian not just of light, but of memory and history. Asterisk, as the night deepened, Clara felt the presence of the hooded figure again. She turned to see it standing silently at the edge of the grove, observing her with a patient, knowing gaze. She realized that this figure, like the lantern, had been watching over Willow Creek for generations, ensuring that the village's secrets remained protected until the right person she came along to witness them. Asterisk, with a deep sense of reverence, Clara left the grove, following the hidden path back to the riverbank. The mist had thickened, wrapping the world in a soft, dreamlike blanket. The lantern glowed steadily, a beacon of guidance and reassurance. Clara felt her connection to the village deepen, a sense of belonging and purpose settling in her heart. Asterisk, returning home, she placed the scrolls and maps carefully in her chest. The night had revealed more than she could have imagined, yet she knew that many secrets remained. Willow Creek was a living memory, full of whispers, shadows, and light, and she had only begun to understand her role in its preservation. Asterisk, that night, as Clara drifted into sleep beneath her quilt, she dreamed not only of the lantern and the river, but of the hidden path, the grove, and the stones with their carved symbols. She felt the weight and beauty of history, the gentle pulse of memory, and the quiet promise that she had become a guardian of Willow Creek. Asterisk, and outside her window, the lantern continued to glow, faithful as ever, keeping watch over the village and the river. A silent sentinel in the heart of Willow Creek. The Last Lantern of Willow Creek Part 5. The Lantern's Secret. The first chill of winter had begun to touch Willow Creek. Frost clung to the tips of the pines, and the river moved sluggishly, its surface reflecting the gray sky with muted clarity. Clara had grown accustomed to the rhythm of the village, the ebb and flow of daily life, the whispers of the river, and the soft, steadfast glow of the lantern outside her window. Yet tonight she felt a sense of urgency, as if the village itself was guiding her toward a revelation that had waited decades to be discovered. Clara wrapped herself in her shawl and stepped into the night. The streets were empty, the village quiet, save for the occasional clatter of a door swinging in the wind. The lantern's light gleamed through the mist, casting long, comforting shadows along the path. She followed its glow to the riverbank, her breath forming small clouds in the crisp air. When she arrived, the figure awaited her, silent as always, its presence reassuring yet mysterious. Tonight, however, Clara sensed something different. The figure's stance was purposeful, its gestures deliberate, as if guiding her toward a truth she had not yet uncovered. The river shimmered beneath the lantern's glow, and Clara saw the familiar reflections: villagers at work, children playing, families gathering. But now, the images moved with a clarity she had never seen before, as if the river itself had grown eager to reveal its secrets. She noticed the hooded woman again, standing near the edge of the reflections, guarding an area that seemed more significant than before. Clara's curiosity was piqued. She knew she had to follow, to understand what the woman was protecting. The figure beside her gestured toward a cluster of trees at the river's bend. Clara moved carefully, her eyes scanning the shadows for the path that had been hidden from plain sight. The hooded woman remained distant, her presence commanding and watchful. As Clara approached, she noticed a narrow trail, overgrown with moss and fallen leaves, leading to a small clearing. In the center of the clearing stood a structure she had never seen, a modest stone building, its walls weathered and covered in ivy. The door was slightly ajar, and the lantern's light seemed to beckon her closer. Clara stepped forward, her fingers trembling slightly as she pushed the door open. Inside, the room was sparse but carefully arranged. Shelves lined the walls, filled with books, scrolls, and artifacts. A central table held a single, intricately carved box. Clara approached the box, her heart pounding. She lifted the lid and found inside a collection of letters, journals, and small objects that had belonged to generations of villagers. Each item carried a story, a fragment of history preserved through careful tending and watchful guardianship. As she examined the contents, she realized the significance. The lantern had not only guided her to these treasures, but had protected them for centuries. The figure beside her spoke, its voice soft yet commanding, resonating within her mind. The village's memory is contained here. Every life, every choice, every story woven into Willow Creek. You are the keeper, the one who must ensure these truths are never lost. Clara felt a weight settle upon her shoulders. A responsibility she had not anticipated but understood with clarity. The lantern had chosen her, and she had accepted. She spent hours studying the letters and artifacts, piecing together the lives of those who had walked the village streets long before her. She learned of triumphs and tragedies, of love and loss, of hope and despair, all captured in the careful, deliberate lives of the villagers. As the night deepened, the lantern's glow seemed to intensify, filling the room with a warm, golden light. Clara noticed a faint inscription carved into the box. To remember is to protect. To protect is to honor. To honor is to live. She traced the words with her fingers, understanding now the full purpose of the lantern. It was not merely a light, nor a guide, it was the village's heart, a symbol of memory, protection, and continuity. The hooded woman appeared once more, stepping lightly into the room. Clara could now see her face, a woman with kind eyes, lined with the wisdom of years. She nodded to Clara, acknowledging her role, and then turned to the artifacts, as if ensuring that the legacy she had protected for so long was now in capable hands. Clara understood that the lantern, the figure, and the hooded woman were part of a continuum, a lineage of guardians entrusted with Willow Creek's memories. Each generation had a watcher, a keeper, someone who could see the past, understand it, and protect it from fading into oblivion. And now, that responsibility rested with Clara. She carefully replaced the items in the box, ensuring each was secure and preserved. The lantern's glow pulsed gently, almost in approval. Clara stepped outside, the night air crisp against her skin. The river reflected the stars above, the mist curling softly along its edges. The village lay quiet, its streets bathed in the soft, golden light of the lantern. She felt a profound sense of connection, not only to the villagers of the past but to the very spirit of Willow Creek itself. Returning home, Clara placed the box in a safe corner of her room. She understood now that she was both observer and participant, a link between past and present. The river, the lantern, the figure, and the hooded woman had guided her to this understanding. Willow Creek's stories were no longer hidden, they were alive, woven into the very fabric of the village. And she was their steward, that night, as she drifted into sleep. Clara dreamt of the villagers' lives, the laughter of children, the toil of farmers, the quiet moments of reflection by candlelight. She dreamed of the lantern, its glow steadfast and unwavering, and of the river, carrying memories across time. And she felt the gentle presence of the figure and the hooded woman, guardians of Willow Creek, watching over her with quiet pride. The morning light touched the village softly, and the lantern outside her window continued to burn, faithful and eternal. Clara awoke with a sense of peace and purpose, knowing that she had become part of something greater than herself. Willow Creek's secrets were no longer hers alone, they belonged to the village, the river, the lantern, and now, to her. And as the days passed, Clara walked the streets with reverence, seeing the echoes of the past in every corner, every tree, every ripple of the river. The lantern's light remained her constant guide, a symbol of memory, protection, and continuity. She understood now the true heart of Willow Creek. It was not the river, nor the streets, nor the houses. It was the people, the stories, and the unbroken chain of guardians who had ensured that these memories would endure, forever illuminated by the last lantern of Willow Creek.